You had a normal childhood, no hitting, no shouting, no obvious crisis. And yet, something still feels off, not broken, not dramatic, just like something was quietly missing, and you could never quite name it. Here's what most people don't realize. Sometimes childhood leaves marks not by what occurred, but by what was never there at all. The curiosity that never came, the comfort that wasn't offered, the moment you needed to be seen and weren't. That kind of absence has a name: childhood emotional neglect. And the strangest part, most people who grew up this way have no idea. They weren't obviously hurt, they just adapted. And those adaptations, over time, turned into habits. Habits that often appear completely healthy from the outside. Habits people might even compliment you for. But underneath each one is a story about a kid who learned to survive without the things they needed most. Today we're looking at 5 of those habits. Welcome back, I'm Cog, let's get into it. You're the person who never asks for help. Software you don't understand at work? You spend 3 hours figuring it out alone, before you'd even consider sending a message to IT. Moving apartments? You handle it. Sick? You push through it. Your friend has a crisis. You show up. You have a crisis. You tell no one. Your colleagues admire your calm in chaos. They call you reliable, unshakable. What they don't see are the quiet rules you wrote for yourself, somewhere around age 7. Asking for help is risky. Here's what likely happened. When a child reaches out for comfort again and again, and the response is cold, distracted, or impatient, the brain draws a conclusion. If I need someone, I'll be rejected, so I need to become my own everything. That's not resilience, that's a coping mechanism wearing resilience as clothes. It's built on a belief that people are fundamentally unreliable, that needing someone will end in disappointment. So when you wave off help as an adult, you're not being efficient, you're protecting yourself from the worst feeling you know, needing someone and finding no one there. Have you noticed yourself doing this? Quietly handling things alone, not because you prefer it, but because asking feels like a door you don't trust. You get bumped into at the grocery store. You say sorry. You ask a question in a meeting. You open with, "Sorry to bother you." A single book is slightly crooked on your shelf. You apologize to your guest for the mess. People think you're polite, and maybe you are. But here's what to notice. This isn't occasional. It's not situational. It happens in every direction, even when you've done nothing wrong. Even when you're the one who got bumped. That's not manners. That's a pattern. And underneath it is something specific. A subtle, persistent sense that you should take up less space in the room. If you grew up feeling like your presence was somehow an inconvenience, maybe your parents were always tired or emotionally absent or just not that engaged, you learned to shrink. Sorry for being here. Sorry for needing something. Sorry for existing in your line of sight. Every apology becomes a preemptive move. You say sorry before anyone has the chance to make you feel like you shouldn't be there, because somewhere along the way you decided they probably would. Does this feel familiar? The reflexive "I'm sorry" before you've even assessed whether you did anything wrong? You are exceptionally good at reading people. You pick up on a mood shift before someone's expression has even changed. You adjust your tone, your opinions, sometimes your whole energy, to match whoever you're with. People say you have high emotional intelligence, and that part is true. But notice how this is different from habit 1. Habit 1 is about collapsing inward. I don't need anyone. This one is about dissolving outward. The self becomes fluid, because a stable one was never quite formed. Here's where it often comes from. When parents don't provide a consistent emotional baseline, when their moods are unpredictable or they're emotionally unavailable, the child becomes an expert in reading them. You monitored the energy in the room. You learned when it was safe to speak, when to stay invisible, when to be funny to lighten the tension. You became a mirror, because having your own solid self wasn't really an option. You wear the moods of others like a borrowed coat, never quite warm in your own skin. As an adult, you might feel like a slightly different person depending on who you're with. And underneath all of it, a question that doesn't go away. Who am I when no one's watching? Which of these feels most familiar? Collapsing inward or dissolving outward? You're the one everyone calls when things fall apart. Friends come to you first. Colleagues lean on you. Family members bring you their problems to solve. You stay late. You fix things. You hold it together. For everyone, it looks like generosity. It often is. But it's also quietly a way of avoiding something. Being the one with needs. In childhood, you may have discovered that the most reliable way to get warmth from your parents was to be useful. Maybe you looked after younger siblings. Maybe you became the emotional anchor for a parent who couldn't carry their own weight. And you learned one rule, clearly, deeply. Your value is measured by what you do for others, not by who you are. So now, as an adult, you're surrounded by people who take, and you genuinely don't know how to receive, because receiving feels dangerous, like a debt you can't repay, like making yourself vulnerable in a way that never ends well. Psychologists sometimes call this the fawn response, earning safety through service. It kept you close to people who might otherwise have ignored you. The quiet irony is this: the people most in need of care are often the ones who've spent their whole lives giving it to everyone else. Is there someone in your life right now who gives and never seems to let anyone give back? Someone asks, "How do you feel about that?" And your mind just goes blank. Not because you're being thoughtful, not because you're private. You genuinely don't know. Here's why that happens. In a healthy childhood, parents act as emotional mirrors. When a child cries, a parent says, "You're upset because your toy broke." That sentence does something essential. It takes an internal experience, formless, overwhelming, and gives it a name. It says, what you're feeling is real, and it matters. In an emotionally neglectful environment, that mirroring never happened. The child's emotions were treated as irrelevant or inconvenient. So the child did the only logical thing. They turned the volume down. They disconnected the wire between feeling and awareness. Because feeling things served no purpose. There was no one there to help make sense of them. As an adult, this can show up as a kind of emotional flatness. You watch other people connect deeply to their passions, their grief, their joy, and you wonder why the same things don't seem to land the same way for you. In psychology, this is called alexithymia. Literally, no words for feelings. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the absence of language to identify them. And this is important. It's not a personality trait, it's a skill that was never developed. Because during the critical developmental window, there was no one there to teach it. Of the 5 habits we've covered, this one is often the hardest to recognize in yourself. Because the blind spot, by definition, is the one you can't see. If you recognized yourself in any of these, the first thing I want you to hear is this: there is nothing wrong with you. Your brain did exactly what a healthy brain does under difficult conditions. It adapted. It built these habits to protect you in a world that wasn't giving you what you needed. Think of them as armor that was built piece by piece, quietly over years, by a kid who had to figure things out alone. And that armor worked. It kept you safe. It got you here. But here's what changes. The environment shifted. You grew up. The threats that armor was built for, they're mostly gone now. And the same protection that once kept you safe is now, slowly, getting in the way. It's blocking the connection you've always wanted. The kind where you can actually be known and not feel the need to run. Healing isn't about fixing something that's broken. It starts with understanding something differently. Those needs were real. They were always real. And needing things, that was never weakness. Learning to lean on others doesn't undo your strength. It complements it. You don't have to become someone who falls apart. You just have to consider, slowly at your own pace, that depending on someone might not destroy you after all. The kid who needed to be seen finally grew up. Now it's your turn to see them. If any of this resonates and you find yourself struggling, please consider speaking with a mental health professional. This video is for educational purposes, not a substitute for support. Which of these 5 habits felt most like you? Drop the number in the comments, 1 through 5, and if this felt like something someone in your life needed to hear, send it to them. Because sometimes the most healing thing is just realizing you're not the only one who feels this way. I'm Cog. Subscribe for more. See you next week.